The 18th century French painter Jean Baptiste Simeon Chardin stands out among the painters of his time through the modesty of his subject matter. Chardin was famous for still lifes and humble interior scenes. Chardin was not only modest in his aims as an artist, he was humbled by life. 3 of his children died in his lifetime, one of which was a suicide. This is a pastel self-portrait of him. Here is another. This is one of his wife. I will show you a few more examples of his work before I focus on the few which are on my mind right now. You may be familiar with this very famous painting of his titled Soap Bubbles. This is one of his more important still lifes titled The Ray. His variations of a boy building a house of cards have been on my mind recently. I noticed myself thinking of these works and I felt the need to revisit them and to make this video. Having these different versions of the same scene allows us to go deeper into each one by comparing it with the others. So we are left with more than a mere sum of parts. Suppose Chardin only made one version of this subject. We may swallow the scene whole, inferring a straightforward comment on the game of chance that life presents us and its metaphor with the trivial game of cards. Standing alone, any of these paintings I am showing you now might simply be described as playful, that the play of cards is transcribed into the play of painting. But the nuance of these works pull us deeper into them, and if we consider them as an ensemble and how they relate to each other, a whole new set of associations come into relief. The abstract, formal differences between each of these paintings are not all that significant. Perhaps one is cooler or crisper than the other, warmer and looser. But these abstract differences are not as relevant to the figurative differences. Considering each one in relation to the group illuminates their idiosyncrasies. As with any portrait, engaging with the subject, empathizing with the subject, allows us to stand outside of ourselves. It allows us to imagine a vantage point on ourselves that our first-person perspective excludes. That it is always the other that we judge on appearance, and the other that judges us from our appearance. Here we encounter a subject engaged in an activity that is parallel to ours. Each boy building a house of cards is absorbed in the activity the way we are absorbed in contemplating the painting. We are looking in on subjects who are in solitude, and we are doing so without disturbing their privacy. We see each engaged in a puzzle, and we may place any puzzle of life in as metaphor. We feel the potential of unknown outcomes, of strategy, success, and failure. Along with the motivations and emotions present with Chardin as he executed these works are our own interpretations emerging from our state of mind, the baggage that we bring to the painting. We cannot ever read the thoughts of another person the way we know our thoughts as we author them within ourselves. And so when we feel what an expression might mean on another subject, we are always relating an outward appearance to our own subjectivity and inferring on the other what we may sense as if the other was me, was you. As I meditate on these works, I find myself contemplating the role of class in determining the outcome of an individual, how good fortune or bad fortune takes precedence over merit and endurance. Perhaps this adolescent is of high social standing, and he has clarity and agency as he looks over the set of cards before him with a sense of pride and authority. Perhaps this boy is slouched in resignation and puzzlement, incapable of commanding the parts into the whole, incapable of seeing the larger picture around him. Chardin, the son of a cabinet maker, had no mission of fulfilling the lofty role of history painter as his contemporary Jacques-Louis David did. Perhaps some thought he was incapable of technically achieving what is required of history painting. But someone of Chardin's humility would be averse to depicting the human body as an ideal, as an archetype to stand in parallel with the classicism of the Greeks and Romans. Perhaps Chardin had the wisdom to accept his station in life, knowing that his vision and his being transcended social strata. He certainly could have been a history painter in my estimation, if such a designation depends solely on mastery of craft. After all, the nuance of history painting aimed to distinguish human emotion and states of mind from other emotions and states of mind. In other words, history painting depicted the human body in a universalized appearance. It depicts emotion as it may appear on the face of anyone, as opposed to how it may appear incarnated in the countenance of a subjective individual. It is in some ways more ambitious to capture the idiosyncrasies of the individual as opposed to depicting an allegorical scene correctly, as in correctly adhering to a classical convention. Consider David's figures. They appear as animated marble. They take the poses of timeless grace. They are inherited from the canon of Western art. They show no frailty. Their vulnerability is the vulnerability of humanity, not the vulnerability of the subjective individual, who can be understood independently of status and class.